The prison planet Korvax 7 was a frozen wasteland where the temperature never rose above freezing, and the wind never stopped howling. Captain Lee Dong-woo watched his breath turn to ice as he was marched from the transport ship toward the mining complex. The Corvani had chosen this world specifically to break the spirits of their prisoners. 3 months had passed since the capture, and the human soldiers had been forced to work in the crystal mines deep underground. The work was brutal and designed to crush hope. Most alien species sent to this place gave up within weeks and begged their governments to surrender, rather than watch their people suffer. But the humans were different, and the Corvani were beginning to realize they had made a serious mistake. Captain Lee Dong-woo had lost 30 pounds, but his eyes still burned with determination. His soldiers looked thin and tired, but they moved with military precision and never stopped supporting each other. Commander Park Ji-hai had become the unofficial leader of the prisoner resistance. She organized the humans into work groups that helped weaker members and shared resources. The other alien prisoners watched in amazement as the humans created a support system that kept everyone alive and hopeful. The Corvani warden was a massive creature called Vex 445, who enjoyed taunting the prisoners. It would walk through the barracks, speaking through its translator device and telling lies about how their governments had abandoned them. The warden particularly enjoyed trying to break human morale. "Your Earth has gone silent," Vex 445 would say with electronic laughter. "No rescue ships coming, no demands for your return. They have forgotten you exist and moved on to other concerns." But the humans could tell the warden was lying because the guards seemed nervous and constantly checked their weapons. Lieutenant Kim Min-ho had made friends with other prisoners, including a reptilian alien named Zek from the Talar species Zek, had been imprisoned for 2 years and had seen many groups of prisoners arrive. Most species broke within months, but something was different about the humans. The humans never stopped planning and organizing even under the worst conditions. They created secret communication networks, shared food with weaker prisoners, and maintained military discipline. Private Han So-young had figured out how to cause small equipment failures that slowed down mining operations. Sergeant Choi Hyun-sik had recovered from his shoulder wound and become the unofficial historian of their captivity. He spent evenings telling stories about Earth and Korean culture to keep spirits high. The other alien prisoners would gather to listen to tales of human determination and courage. The stories always ended the same way, with the promise that humans never abandoned their own people. Sergeant Choi would describe snow-covered mountains in Korea, where his grandmother lived, and explain how human families never gave up searching for lost members no matter how much time passed. Corporal Yang Tai-min used his engineering background to study Corvani technology and identify weaknesses in their security systems. He pretended to be broken and defeated, while secretly mapping guard rotations and weapon storage areas. His information was passed to other prisoners through coded messages. The Corvani had expected the humans to become quiet and depressed, like other species. But instead, they became more organized with each passing day. They established their own command structure with Captain Lee Dong-woo making decisions and Commander Park Ji-hai handling daily operations. Private Han So-young discovered that many of the alien prisoners had given up hope years ago, but the arrival of the humans had changed something in the prison. The way the humans refused to accept defeat was spreading to other species who began to remember their own reasons for fighting. The mining work was dangerous, and several prisoners had died in cave-ins and equipment accidents, but the humans always recovered the bodies and held memorial services that honored the dead and strengthened the resolve of the living. The Corvani could not understand this behavior. Food was provided in barely sufficient quantities to keep the prisoners alive, but the humans organized a sharing system that ensured everyone got equal portions. They also figured out how to supplement their diet with edible fungi found growing in the mine tunnels. The prison barracks were overcrowded and cold, but the humans created sleeping arrangements that maximized warmth and privacy. They taught other prisoners how to exercise in small spaces and maintain physical fitness, despite the harsh conditions. Their military training proved invaluable. Zek told Lieutenant Kim Min-ho about previous escape attempts that had failed because prisoners from different species could not work together. But the humans were different. They treated all prisoners as allies worth protecting, and began building coalitions across species lines. The Corvani guards became increasingly frustrated with human behavior. They had expected broken spirits and desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, they found prisoners who maintained dignity and continued to resist in small but meaningful ways. Every day brought new acts of quiet defiance. Commander Park Ji-hai realized that their captors were making propaganda broadcasts showing prisoner conditions to intimidate other species. But she also understood that these same broadcasts were creating trails that could be followed back to their location. Earth would be searching. The humans began teaching other prisoners basic Earth military principles about surviving captivity and maintaining hope. They explained that being captured did not mean being defeated, and that rescue was always possible if they stayed strong and worked together. Captain Lee Dong-woo noticed changes in guard behavior. That suggested something was happening outside the prison. The Corvani seemed nervous about something and were moving equipment around their facilities as if preparing for an emergency. Their confident attitude was beginning to crack. The winter on Korvac 7 was brutal, but the humans adapted by creating warming stations using waste heat from mining equipment. They shared body heat during the coldest nights and never let anyone freeze alone. Their survival instincts impressed even the hardened alien prisoners. As months passed, the humans maintained their exercise routines and military bearing despite inadequate food and harsh conditions. They continued planning and preparing for opportunities that might arise. Their captors had expected them to weaken, but they were becoming stronger. The other alien prisoners began to understand something important about human nature. These creatures from Earth did not accept defeat easily, and they never abandoned hope of returning home. Their determination was infectious and began spreading throughout the entire prison population. Sergeant Choi Hyun-sik explained to alien listeners that humans came from a world where survival meant fighting against impossible odds. Their planet had produced countless stories of small groups holding out against superior enemies and eventually winning. Through pure determination and clever tactics, the Corvani had made a critical error in judgment. They had assumed that all species would react to captivity the same way, by becoming passive and hopeless. Instead, they had captured representatives of a species that became more dangerous when cornered and never stopped fighting for freedom. Lieutenant Kim Min-ho learned from Zek that the Corvani were moving ships around their star system and reinforcing their military installations. Something had made them nervous and they were preparing their defenses. The humans suspected that Earth was already taking action. Private Han So-young continued her sabotage activities, causing mining equipment to break down at critical moments. The delays were small, but they added up over time and frustrated the alien overseers who could not figure out why their machines kept malfunctioning. The truth was becoming clear. To everyone in the prison, Earth had not forgotten its captured soldiers and was preparing some kind of response. The humans maintained their hope and discipline while their captors grew more nervous with each passing day. The Corvani were about to learn why Earth never forgets. The space around the human transport ship looked empty and peaceful, until the massive alien warship appeared like a metal monster from the darkness. Captain Lee Dong-woo felt his heart sink as he watched the enemy vessel power up its weapons. The ship was 3 times larger than their small transport and covered with spikes and armor that looked designed for war. The aliens called themselves the Corvani, and they had been hunting human ships for weeks. Their vessels were fast and deadly, and they seemed to enjoy capturing prisoners rather than simply destroying everything they found. Lee Dong-woo had hoped to reach the human colony on Kepler 442b without incident. But now his 20 soldiers were trapped. Commander Park Ji-hai stood next to the captain on the bridge, watching the alien ship move closer. Her face showed no fear, even though she knew they were about to be captured or killed. She had trained for this moment her entire military career, and she would not let her soldiers see her panic. The Corvani sent a message to the human ship demanding immediate surrender. The voice that came through the communication system sounded like metal scraping against stone, and the translator made it even more frightening. The alien commander identified himself as Thex 901 and warned that resistance would result in the death of all humans aboard. Lieutenant Kim Min-ho was the youngest soldier on the ship at only 22 years old. He had joined the Earth Defense Force to explore space and help protect human colonies, but he had never imagined facing creatures like these. The Corvani looked like giant insects crossed with machines, and their forearms moved with mechanical precision. When the aliens boarded the transport ship, they moved through the corridors like a wave of metal and death. Their armor was thick and black, and their weapons fired beams of energy that could cut through steel. The human soldiers fought back with everything they had, but their small arms could barely scratch the alien equipment. Sergeant Choi Hyun-sik took a plasma blast to the shoulder while trying to protect the medical supplies they were carrying to the colony. He fell against a bulkhead but kept firing his rifle until the aliens overwhelmed his position. 3 Corvani warriors surrounded him and forced him to drop his weapon. The battle lasted only 15 minutes before the humans were forced to surrender. They had killed 2 aliens and wounded several others, but the Corvani had superior numbers and technology. Captain Lee Dong-woo made the decision to save his soldiers' lives rather than fight to the death. Private Han So-young helped carry the wounded as they were marched toward the alien ship. She was small and young, but she had grown up on a military base and knew how to stay calm under pressure. Her father had taught her that capture was not the end of the fight, but only the beginning of a new kind of battle. The Corvani prison ship was a massive vessel designed to hold thousands of prisoners from different species. The humans could see other aliens in cages as they were led through the corridors. Some looked like they had been captives for years and had given up hope of ever seeing their homes again. Corporal Yang Taiman noticed that the aliens were recording everything with small floating cameras. They seemed to be making some kind of propaganda video showing human weakness. The old soldier realized this meant their capture was part of a larger plan to intimidate other human colonies. The prison cells were small metal boxes with barely enough room to lie down. The aliens provided water that tasted like chemicals and food that looked like gray paste. But the humans began talking to each other through the walls, immediately sharing information and making plans. Captain Lee Dong-woo used hand signals and whispered words to organize his people, even though they were separated into different cells. He had been trained in prisoner survival and knew that maintaining military structure was essential for keeping hope alive. His soldiers trusted him completely. The alien guards treated the humans like animals, pushing food through slots in the doors and speaking about them as if they could not understand. The Corvani seemed to believe that all species would break quickly under pressure and surrender their homeworlds to avoid seeing their people suffer. But the humans were different from other species the Corvani had encountered. They came from a world where survival meant fighting against impossible odds. Their history was filled with stories of small groups, holding out against larger enemies, and never giving up, even when defeat seemed certain. Commander Park Ji-hai managed to scratch a message into her cell wall using a piece of metal from her uniform. The message was simple, but powerful. Earth will come. It became a motto that spread through all the human prisoners and gave them strength during the darkest moments. The Corvani broadcast their propaganda across their empire, showing the captured humans and demanding that Earth surrender or watch their soldiers die slowly in labor camps. But they made a critical mistake by sending these signals across space. Every transmission could be traced, and every broadcast created a trail leading back to their location. Young Lieutenant Kim Min-ho began talking to alien prisoners in nearby cells, learning basic words in their languages and gathering information about Corvani methods. He discovered that most species surrendered quickly when their people were captured, but he also learned that no species had ever mounted a rescue operation. The aliens seemed confused by human behavior. Most prisoners became quiet and depressed after capture, but the humans became more organized and determined. They shared their food, helped the wounded, and never stopped planning. Even the other alien prisoners began to notice something different about these new captives. As days passed, the humans adapted to their situation without losing their military bearing. They established watch schedules, shared intelligence, and began studying their captors' weaknesses. The Corvani had expected broken spirits, but instead, they found soldiers who refused to accept defeat. The prison ship jumped through hyperspace, carrying its cargo toward the Corvani home system. The aliens believed they had won a great victory by capturing Earth soldiers, but they had no understanding of human nature or the response their actions would trigger across the galaxy. Captain Lee Dong-woo knew that Earth would never abandon them. The military had drilled this principle into every soldier: no one gets left behind. It might take time, and it might cost resources, but eventually human ships would come looking for their missing people. The Corvani had made the biggest mistake in their empire's history. They had taken humans prisoner and expected Earth to behave like other species that accepted defeat quickly. Instead, they had created a situation that would bring the full attention and anger of humanity down upon their heads. As the prison ship traveled toward its destination, the 20 human soldiers began preparing for whatever came next. They had lost their freedom, but not their determination. They had been captured, but not defeated. And somewhere behind them, in the darkness of space, Earth was already beginning to respond. Admiral Song Min-jung stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force flagship Incheon, staring at star charts that showed the location of every Corvani military installation. 6 months had passed since 20 human soldiers disappeared into alien space, and Earth had spent every day of that time preparing for war. The admiral was a small woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had served in the military for 30 years and had never lost a soldier under her command. The Corvani had made a terrible mistake by taking her people, and now they would learn the price of challenging Earth. Dr. Yoon Hae-jin worked at a computer station nearby, surrounded by screens showing alien language patterns and communication intercepts. She was Earth's top expert on alien languages and had spent months learning everything possible about Corvani culture and military tactics. The doctor had discovered that the Corvani were broadcasting propaganda about their human prisoners across their empire. They seemed to believe that showing captured Earth soldiers would frighten other species into surrendering without a fight. But every broadcast created electronic trails that human technology could follow. Commander Bae Sung-ho led the Special Forces unit that had been training for this mission. His team included the best soldiers from every branch of Earth's military: mountain fighters who could survive in any environment, naval specialists who understood ship operations, and urban warfare experts who could fight in cities. The commander had studied every piece of intelligence about Corvani weapons and tactics. His soldiers knew how the aliens moved, how they thought, and what their weaknesses were. They had practiced fighting Corvani-style opponents in simulation chambers until the movements became automatic. Earth had not simply decided to rescue 20 soldiers. The government had made a choice that would echo across the galaxy for generations. Any species that harmed human beings would face consequences they could not imagine. The Corvani Empire would become an example for everyone else. The plan was both elegant and terrifying. Earth would not just save its captured people, but would send a message that no civilization could ignore. The rescue operation would demonstrate human technology, determination, and willingness to travel across space to protect their own. Admiral Song thought about Captain Lee Dong-woo and his soldiers imprisoned on some frozen world light years from home. She knew they would be maintaining discipline and hope even under the worst conditions. Earth military training emphasized that capture was not defeat, and rescue was always possible. The first phase of the operation began with electronic warfare specialist Park Yoon-ji led a team of computer experts who had been infiltrating Corvani networks for months. They planted viruses, stole information, and began mapping every military facility in alien space. The hackers worked from hidden bases scattered across human space using advanced computers that could break alien encryption codes in minutes. They had already stolen the locations of every prison camp, military base, and government facility in the Corvani Empire Park. Yoon-ji discovered that the aliens had captured prisoners from dozens of different species over many years. Most governments had simply accepted the losses and avoided further conflict with the powerful empire. But Earth was different, and the Corvani were about to learn how different. The human fleet assembled in secret at a base beyond the edge of explored space. Hundreds of ships gathered, including massive battleships, fast attack vessels, and specialized rescue craft. The Armada represented the largest military force Earth had ever sent beyond the solar system. Each ship was equipped with the latest human technology, including stealth systems that could make them invisible to alien sensors, weapons that could destroy targets from incredible distances, and shields that could absorb enormous amounts of enemy fire. Captain Lim Woo-jin commanded one of the stealth ships that would infiltrate Corvani space ahead of the main fleet. His vessel looked like a small asteroid from the outside, but contained advanced sensors and communication equipment that would coordinate the rescue operation. The captain and his crew had volunteered for the most dangerous part of the mission. They would enter enemy territory weeks before the attack began and gather real-time intelligence about prison locations and guard rotations. One mistake would mean death or capture. Dr. Yoon Hae-jin had decoded enough Corvani communications to understand their military structure and political system. The empire was ruled by a council of war leaders who believed that superior technology made them unbeatable. They had never faced an enemy like humanity. The aliens had conquered dozens of species over the centuries by capturing key individuals and forcing governments to surrender, rather than watch their people suffer slowly in prison camps. The strategy had worked perfectly until they encountered humans. Earth military planners had identified every weakness in Corvani defenses, including the fact that their ships were powerful but slow, and their communication systems could be disrupted by human electronic warfare. The aliens had grown overconfident after centuries of easy victories. Commander Bae Sung-ho briefed his special forces teams on their specific objectives. Each unit had trained to rescue prisoners from different types of facilities. Some would assault heavily defended military prisons, while others would infiltrate civilian camps where aliens held non-combatant captives. The soldiers knew that this mission was about more than saving 20 people. It was about establishing Earth's reputation in a galaxy full of species that might be watching to see how humans responded to aggression. The rescue would prove that Earth kept its promises. Admiral Song received regular reports from intelligence teams that had been studying Corvani society and military capabilities. The aliens were technologically advanced, but had become lazy and predictable after centuries of fighting weaker opponents. They were not prepared for human tactics. The human approach to warfare was different from anything the Corvani had encountered before. Earth's military combined advanced technology with flexible thinking and willingness to take risks. Other species fought according to rigid patterns, but humans adapted quickly as the fleet moved toward Corvani space using routes that avoided alien patrol areas. Admiral Song broadcast a message to all ship captains. The words were simple but carried the weight of Earth's determination. We bring our people home no matter the cost. The electronic warfare teams reported that they had successfully infiltrated critical Corvani computer systems and were ready to disable enemy communications and weapons at the right moment. The aliens had no idea that their most secure networks were already compromised. Captain Lim Woo-jin and his stealth ship crew crossed into Corvani territory and began gathering detailed intelligence about prison facilities. They confirmed that human soldiers were being held on Korvax 7, along with hundreds of other prisoners from different species. The intelligence reports revealed that the Corvani had grown overconfident and were not expecting any kind of rescue operation. Their prison security was designed to prevent escapes, not to resist military assault from outside forces. Dr. Yoon Hae-jin monitored alien communications and noticed increasing nervousness among Corvani military leaders. Something had made them suspicious, and they were beginning to reinforce their border defenses, but their preparations were too little and too late. The human fleet continued its approach, using advanced stealth technology that made the ships nearly invisible to alien sensors. The Corvani had superior numbers, but Earth had superior planning, intelligence, and motivation. Admiral Song knew that the success of this mission would determine how other alien civilizations viewed humanity for generations. If the rescue succeeded, it would establish Earth as a power that protected its people and honored its commitments. The Corvani had assumed that humans would behave like other species and accept the loss of a few soldiers rather than risk larger conflicts. But they had made a fatal error in understanding human nature, and Earth was about to teach them the consequences. Technical Sergeant Lim Woo-jin crawled through the maintenance tunnel beneath Korvax 7's main mining facility, while ice crystals formed on his breathing mask. The tunnel was barely wide enough for a human and filled with pipes that carried heated air to keep the prison complex from freezing completely. He had been on the planet for 3 days with 11 other Special Forces soldiers who had infiltrated different areas of the prison. Their mission was to locate the human captives and prepare for extraction, but what they discovered was far more impressive than anyone had expected. The human prisoners were not just surviving their captivity, they were actively gathering intelligence and sabotaging Corvani operations. Sergeant Lim watched through hidden cameras as Private Han So-young caused another mining machine to malfunction. With a technique that looked like an accident, Captain Lee Dong-woo had turned his 20 soldiers into a resistance cell that operated under the aliens' noses. They had mapped guard rotations, identified weapon storage areas, and established communication networks with prisoners from other species. Through his surveillance equipment, Sergeant Lim observed the daily prisoner lineup. His captured comrades looked thinner after months of inadequate food, but they still maintained military bearing and stood in formation despite brutal treatment. The sight filled him with both pride and anger. Commander Park Ji-hai had somehow obtained detailed information about Corvani security procedures and was passing intelligence to other prisoner groups. The aliens had no idea that their captives were organizing resistance activities right under their supervision. The infiltration team discovered that the prison held over 800 beings from 40 different species. Most had been captured during raids on their homeworlds and were being held as hostages to force their governments to surrender territory or resources to the Corvani Empire lieutenant. Kim Min-ho had befriended many of the alien prisoners and was serving as a translator and coordinator between different species. His language skills and diplomatic training were helping to build unprecedented cooperation among groups that had never worked together. Zek, the reptilian prisoner from the Talar species, had become an invaluable source of intelligence about Corvani operations. He knew guard schedules, security protocols, and the locations of other prison facilities throughout the Empire. His information was being passed to the rescue teams. The alien guards were becoming increasingly nervous about equipment failures, communication disruptions, and reports of strange activities in areas that should have been secure. They had no idea that human hackers were infiltrating their computer systems from light years away. Sergeant Lim observed Corporal Yang Tae-min teaching other prisoners how to create improvised weapons from mining tools and scrap metal. The old engineer had established workshops where aliens from different species learned human military techniques and tactics. The rescue plan required perfect timing and coordination between multiple teams. The main human fleet was still days away, hidden behind a moon in the outer system, while ground teams prepared to neutralize prison defenses without alerting the broader Corvani military specialist Park Yoon-ji and her electronic warfare team had successfully penetrated the prison computer networks and were ready to disable security systems, communications, and automated defenses. The aliens would be blind and helpless when the assault began. The infiltration teams had identified several problems with the original rescue plan. The prison held far more captives than expected, and many were too weak to move quickly. The operation would need additional transport capacity and medical support. Sergeant Choi Hyun-sik had organized the human prisoners into medical teams that were caring for sick and wounded aliens using knowledge gained from their original mission to deliver medical supplies. The Corvani had no idea they were providing health care that kept prisoners alive and strong. The Special Forces teams discovered that Corvani weapons and armor had significant vulnerabilities that human technology could exploit. The aliens relied heavily on energy shields that could be disrupted by electromagnetic pulses, and their communication systems used frequencies that could be jammed. Captain Lim Woo-jin coordinated with other infiltration teams to map the complete layout of the prison complex, including underground tunnels, service passages, and emergency exits. The Corvani had built their facility assuming that prisoners would never organize coordinated escape attempts. Private Han So-young had figured out how to access Corvani computer terminals and was downloading information about other prison facilities in the Empire. Her technical skills, combined with months of observing alien procedures, had given her unprecedented access to enemy systems. The infiltration revealed that the Corvani had made critical errors in their prison design. They had focused on preventing individual escapes, but had not considered the possibility of external rescue operations. Their defenses were positioned to keep people in, not to keep attackers out. Commander Park Ji-hae had established secret communication networks throughout the prison using improvised equipment built from mining machinery and electronic components stolen from guard stations. The system allowed coordination between prisoners in different sections. The human soldiers had spent months studying their captors and identifying weaknesses in Corvani, tactics and equipment. They knew exactly how long it took guards to respond to alarms, which weapons were most effective, and where the aliens stored their emergency supplies. Zek provided detailed intelligence about Corvani military protocols, including the fact that prison guards were not elite soldiers but were poorly trained personnel who had been assigned to what the aliens considered safe duty. The guards were not prepared for real combat. The infiltration teams learned that many alien prisoners had been held for years and had given up hope of rescue, but the arrival of human soldiers had changed the atmosphere in the prison. The way humans refused to surrender was inspiring other species to remember their own strength. Sergeant Lim observed Lieutenant Kim Min-ho conducting what appeared to be a language class, but was actually a briefing session where human military tactics were being taught to alien prisoners. The information was disguised as cultural exchange to avoid suspicion. The Corvani had underestimated both human determination and the effect that human behavior would have on other prisoners. What started as a simple hostage situation had become a multicultural resistance movement that was growing stronger every day. Technical. Sergeant Lim Woo-jin received updated orders from the main fleet, indicating that the rescue operation would include evacuation of all prisoners, regardless of species. Earth had decided that saving only humans would send the wrong message to potential alien allies. The infiltration teams began preparing landing zones for transport ships and identifying the best routes for moving large numbers of people quickly. The operation would need to extract over 800 beings while fighting through Corvani defenses as the rescue teams completed their preparations. Sergeant Lim reflected on what his surveillance had revealed. The captured human soldiers had not only survived months of brutal treatment, but had created a resistance network that was undermining Corvani authority throughout their prison system. The aliens had captured 20 human soldiers expecting to break their spirits and force Earth to surrender. Instead, they had created symbols of human resilience that were inspiring rebellion across their empire. The Corvani were about to learn that their biggest mistake was underestimating what humans could accomplish when their backs were against the wall. The attack began at dawn on Korvax 7, when human stealth bombers appeared from nowhere and destroyed the prison sensor array with surgical precision. Admiral Song's fleet emerged from hyperspace in 12 different star systems, simultaneously catching the Corvani military completely unprepared for coordinated assault across their entire empire. Captain Lee Dong-woo heard the explosions from his cell and immediately began shouting orders to his soldiers who had been preparing for this moment. For months they produced improvised weapons that had been hidden throughout the prison and moved to predetermined positions with military efficiency that amazed their alien cellmates. The Corvani guards ran through the corridors in panic as human special forces breached the outer walls using explosive charges that had been planted during weeks of careful infiltration. The prison alarm systems failed to function because Specialist Park Yoon-ji had disabled them remotely. Lieutenant Kim Min-ho helped coordinate the evacuation of alien prisoners using the basic galactic common language he had learned during captivity. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species followed the humans toward transport ships that were landing in the prison. Courtyard Commander Park Ji-hae led a group of rescued prisoners in capturing the prison armory, where they found weapons and equipment that had been taken from previous captives. She distributed the weapons to anyone who could use them and organized defensive positions to protect the evacuation. The Corvani warden Vex 445 tried to use prisoners as human shields, threatening to execute hostages if the rescue forces did not withdraw immediately. But Sergeant Choi Hyun-sik, despite his old injuries, managed to disarm 2 guards and turn their plasma weapons against them. The alien discovered too late that months of brutal treatment had only made the humans more dangerous and determined rather than weaker. The captured soldiers fought with a fury that terrified their former captors who had expected broken spirits and easy surrender. Across Corvani space, human forces demonstrated technological superiority that shocked the alien empire. Stealth ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts, launching precision strikes against military targets before vanishing into hyperspace. Electronic warfare attacks crippled communications. Admiral Song had planned every detail of the operation to minimize civilian casualties while maximizing psychological impact. Human forces struck only military targets and avoided unnecessary destruction. But the message was clear: Earth could reach anywhere in Corvani space. The most devastating blow came when Dr. Yoon Hae-jin's translation programs broadcast Admiral Song's ultimatum across all Corvani communication networks. In perfect Corvani language that reached every citizen in the Empire, the message was simple and terrifying. You imprisoned 20 human soldiers. We have come for them. Surrender now, or learn why Earth never forgets its own. The broadcast reached millions of Corvani civilians who had never imagined that their government's actions might bring such consequences. Private Han So-young used her knowledge of Corvani computer systems to access prison records and download information about captives held at other facilities. The data revealed the locations of thousands of prisoners from dozens of species held throughout the Empire. The human rescue teams moved through the prison complex, with clockwork precision guided by months of intelligence gathering and careful planning. Every guard post, every security system, and every escape route had been mapped in advance. Zek and other alien prisoners provided crucial support during the evacuation, helping to organize groups by species and ensuring that wounded individuals received medical attention. The cooperation between humans and aliens created an efficiency that surprised even the rescue teams. Captain Lee Dong-woo and his soldiers fought alongside their rescuers with desperate energy, born from months of captivity and determination to escape. They knew the layout of the prison better than their captors and used that knowledge to outflank Corvani defensive positions. The Corvani military tried to respond to the simultaneous attacks across their empire, but their forces were scattered, and their communications were being disrupted by human electronic warfare. Human coordination and superior intelligence gave them overwhelming advantages. Corporal Yang Tai-min led a team of rescued engineers in disabling the prison power systems and opening all the cell doors simultaneously. Hundreds of alien prisoners who had been held for years suddenly found themselves free, and many joined the fight against their former captors. The evacuation transport ships were specially designed for rescue operations with medical facilities and life support systems that could handle multiple alien species. The crews included doctors and translators who could provide immediate care and communication. Within 6 hours, the prison on Korvax 7 had been completely evacuated, and every guard facility destroyed human forces withdrew as quickly as they had arrived, leaving behind only smoking ruins and a message that would spread throughout Corvani space. Similar operations were taking place across the Empire, as human forces struck at military installations and prison facilities with precision that demonstrated months of careful planning and intelligence gathering. The aliens found themselves fighting enemies who knew their weaknesses perfectly. The Corvani government attempted to negotiate, but Admiral Song made it clear that Earth would accept nothing less than complete surrender and the release of all prisoners held throughout their empire. There would be no partial victory or diplomatic compromise. Lieutenant Kim Min-ho helped coordinate medical care for rescued prisoners who had suffered years of malnutrition, and abuse. Human medical teams worked alongside alien doctors to provide treatment for species they had never encountered before. The psychological impact of the rescue operations spread beyond military targets, as Corvani civilians realized that their supposedly invincible empire was being dismantled by aliens they had considered primitive. The propaganda about human weakness had been exposed as dangerous lies. Private Han So-young discovered that the Corvani had been planning similar attacks against other human colonies but had been waiting to see how Earth would respond to the capture of the 20 soldiers. Now those plans would never be implemented. The rescue demonstrated not only human military capability but also human values, as the operation included evacuation of all prisoners regardless of species. Earth forces treated alien captives with the same care and attention given to their own soldiers. Commander Park Ji-hai organized the rescued humans into security teams that helped protect alien prisoners during transport. Many of the aliens had never seen such cooperation between species, and were amazed by human willingness to risk their lives for strangers. Sergeant Choi Hyun-sik used his engineering knowledge to help repair damaged alien equipment and provide technical assistance to species whose technology had been destroyed by their captors. Human versatility and problem-solving skills impressed everyone involved in the operation. The Corvani military command realized they were facing an enemy that combined advanced technology with unbreakable determination and willingness to travel across the galaxy to protect their people. Within hours of the first attacks, surrender negotiations began. The rescue of 20 human soldiers had become something much larger, a demonstration of Earth's values and capabilities that would reshape relationships between species throughout the galaxy. The Corvani Empire was collapsing, and other civilizations were taking notice. 6 months later, Captain Lee Dong-woo stood before the United Earth Assembly, wearing his dress uniform and speaking to representatives from across human space. His soldiers sat in the front row, fully recovered and decorated as heroes. But the real audience for his words extended far beyond Earth. The story of the Corvani rescue had spread throughout the galaxy. Other species watched in amazement as humans had moved heaven and earth to save 20 soldiers. Many alien governments were reassessing their policies toward humanity, recognizing that Earth's promises about protecting its people were not empty words. Lieutenant Kim Min-ho had become an ambassador to the Talar Republic, working with his friend Zek to build stronger relationships between their species. Private Han So-young was training new recruits, teaching them about resilience and adaptation. Sergeant Choi Hyun-sik led a new Special Forces unit dedicated to hostage rescue operations. The Corvani Empire had been disbanded, its territory divided among species that promised to treat prisoners humanely. Many former Corvani citizens had requested to immigrate to human colonies, impressed by Earth's combination of strength and mercy. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about human values. Admiral Song Min-jung reviewed intelligence reports from across known space. Several aggressive species had quietly abandoned plans to test human resolve. Trade agreements with Earth had increased dramatically. The rescue operation had cost enormous resources, but it had bought something priceless: respect and deterrence. In his final words to the assembly, Captain Lee Dong-woo delivered the message Earth wanted every species to hear. We went to space not as conquerors, but as explorers and friends. We offer cooperation to those who treat us fairly. But to anyone who harms our people, remember this: Earth has a long memory, advanced technology, and the will to act. We bring our people home, no matter the cost. The 20 soldiers had returned to Earth as symbols of human determination. Their story would be told for generations, reminding everyone that humanity's greatest strength wasn't weapons or ships, but the simple promise that no one gets left behind. In a galaxy full of species that had learned to accept defeat, humans had proven they would never stop fighting for their own.